Thank you very much, Martin, and thank you, Elizabeth and Isabel, and everybody. Very, very honored and pleased to be with you this morning and to be, to have the opportunity to share a few thoughts. Certainly, as Finance Watch, who is an organization that has as a motto making finance serve society. So obviously, if you're working on making finance serve society, you're interested in money. Because at the end of the day, money is the enabler of social activities. It's an energy. It's a social energy. It's a social contract. Hence the interest of that poll, because if we think that money is what makes other things possible, it's interesting to know where it comes from. And yes, the answer is that private commercial banks create in our societies between 95 and 97% of the money we use. And the rest, to the credit of the people who said, the 27% who said, central banks, the rest comes from central banks. So it's probably about 3% from central banks, 97% from commercial banks. So this is something to be borne in mind when we're going to be discussing, because, this is where it comes from. So let me jump on and try to address a few points this morning, looking at the very, very interesting question, in my view, that this conference asks, which is, how we can unlock new economic thinking for a more sustainable future. I think this is an excellent theme, and this is exactly what we need. I'm very, very happy to be sharing a few thoughts here with you this morning to, here again from the financial side or angle. The first point I'd like to make is that, in our view, before we start talking about finance, we should be talking about society, we should be talking about the economy, and we should be talking about people. It's very, very simple. There can be no such thing as a sustainable economy or a sustainable financial system or sustainable debt, whether that debt is public or private, without a sustainable world. This is absolutely fundamental and must never be forgotten, because very often we have all those debates about, are we going for, typically when this is one of the many topics, but you think about, public debt. Okay, sustainability of public debt. In other words, can governments pay back the debt? Well, or should we go for, building a sustainable world? Well, this is not the right question, because there's no way anybody, including governments, will ever pay the debts back if the world is not sustainable. And this is what we like to call at Finance Watch the risk of disruption of our societies if the world is not sustainable. And really, disruption is what we've unfortunately started seeing in this COVID crisis, where you have a health crisis, which at the end of the day is a sustainability crisis, impacting the economy and impacting the financial world. And when there is no sustainability, well, all the rest follows and stops working effectively, or works in a much less efficient manner. So what do we mean by a sustainable world? I think this needs to be, we need to have a very clear mind on this. There's really two dimensions to it. There's the environmental sustainability, whether on the climate issue, whether on the biodiversity issue, whether on preservation of water and marine resources, whether on prevention of pollution. I mean, you name it. There's many dimensions to environmental sustainability, but this is absolutely essential. And on the same footing, there is social sustainability. Social sustainability is just indispensable because, well, sorry for stating the obvious, but at the end of the day, this is all about people. We human beings, how can we live a decent life on this planet? And this is only the combination of the two dimensions that can make something work. Let's face it, the world we live in today is not sustainable. And I'm not saying this because I'm all gloom and doom. I'm saying this because scientists and analysts tell us so. Look from the environmental standpoint. Look at what the IPCC is writing. I mean, IPCC is scientists, and they're telling us that our world is on a path of global warming comprised between 3.7 and 4.8 degrees at the end of this century. Needless to say that the end of this century is tomorrow morning. Nobody knows how to make this world function beyond, call it 2 degrees. It's not, as if there was like, at 1.9, everything was fine. At 2.1, everything was collapsing. But beyond 2 degrees, everybody's saying, look, we don't know how we're going to make this whole thing work. But IPCC is telling us we're on a path to, call it plus 4 degrees at the end of the century. And that will have terrible consequences in terms of droughts, floods, ocean levels, famines, migrations of populations looking for habitable grounds, etc. So this is very, very serious. On the social side, our world is not sustainable either. I think the biggest problem we have is the growing level of inequalities. Why is inequalities such a big problem? From an economic standpoint and a social standpoint, very simply because when the inequalities are too great, people stop having that willingness to live together. If I don't earn enough to live a life worth of human dignity, I have no interest in the rest. It's as simple as that. And a growing number of people today do not have enough revenues to live a life worth of human dignity, including what we can call the working poor. I mean, people have, you have the unemployed, of course, you have the people left on the side of the road, of course, but you also have many people who actually have the work, but don't earn enough to live decently. And this is not sustainable. Interestingly, financial world has come to realize that it has to deal with sustainability issues for many reasons. And looking back on where the financial world is coming from, this is a very interesting path, because if you had said to a financier, a banker, an asset managers, let's call it 15 years ago, that you wanted finance to work on sustainability issues and to work on sustainable finance, that person, or 99.9% of those financiers, would have laughed. Finance was about something serious, not about working on sustainability. Today, there's not one single financier who would dare say that he or she is not working on sustainable finance. But let's dig deeper and look at why this is the case today. I think there may be 3 different reasons, and the reality of this world is that it's a combination of 3 reasons depending on who you're talking to. The first reason for financiers to recognize the need to integrate the sustainability dimension in a financial logic is that they recognize that as finance, as I said at the beginning of this intervention, is the enabler of human activities, and Martin hinted to this as well. Finance is that very special activity that makes other human activities possible. Therefore, finance is not neutral. It has a special role to play by the mere fact that it orients capital. And this is a logic that in the sustainable finance world is called, and I don't want to speak too much jargon here, but it's an interesting logic, the inside-out socio-environmental materiality dimension of finance. What am I saying here? All I'm saying behind that jargon is that companies, businesses have an impact on the outside world. So it's inside-out impact, materiality of economic activities. And then there is a second dimension, or second reason why financiers are interested in sustainability. It's exactly the other way around. The other way around is so-called financial materiality. In other words, outside in. In other words, the fact that the environment, including the socio-environment, so the social dimension, will have impact on the earnings and the financial results of businesses. So, you have that dual relationship, inside out environmental impact and outside in financial impact. So that's really the two reasons why financiers are interested in this. And of course, there's also marketing reasons. Sustainable finance has become a must for all the financial products on the shelf of financial supermarkets, because customers, demand that. I mean, they want that. So, if customers want it, financiers have a tendency to offer what customers want to buy. And clearly, the real question behind will be, oh, by the way, are those financial products really sustainable or not? That's a huge topic that Finance Watch spends a lot of time working on. But I don't think we have the time to address this question right now. But happy to discuss this. It's the topic of greenwashing and related topics. Now, going back to where money comes from, we really have three forms of finance that are involved in the process. We have private finance to start with, and within private finance, we have the lending that banks do, bank lending. And as we said, money creation comes from commercial banks, following the adage, loans make deposits. When a bank lends money to you, that money is effectively created by the bank when it comes on your account. You've borrowed money. Hey, I just created 100 euros of money when I borrowed 100 from my bank. So that's the source of 95, 98%, 97% of money in our societies. The second source of private finance is really capital market investments. But capital markets is really reinvesting money that already exists. So it is slightly different, but obviously it's a very important dimension. And this is the heart of all these sustainable finance. Well, when it comes to embedding sustainability, it's the heart of all the sustainable finance agenda of the European Union, which is a very, very ambitious work stream. And by the way, today, 21st of April, is a big day because the European Commission, literally as we speak, is adopting, at college level, a number of very fundamental texts that will influence and shape the future of sustainable finance in the EU. But here again, a huge topic. Perhaps in a nutshell, very simple description of something there's a lot of talking about, which is the EU taxonomy of sustainable activities, which is really a classification of economic activities for their levels of sustainability. And obviously, there are two dimensions. Going back to the logic I was developing earlier, there's the environmental taxonomy, which is for the environmental dimension, and there is also hopefully there will be a social taxonomy, and certainly there's a group within a so-called platform of sustainable finance advising the European Commission on the topic that is working on developing a social taxonomy. I happen to have the honor of participating in that platform and being in the group working on developing a social taxonomy. It's work in progress, far from being done yet, and happy to discuss it if you want. But this is to show you that at the end of the day, that taxonomy will mean that one day, a few years down the road, when an investor buys a fund claiming to be sustainable, to be ESG, environmental, social, and governance, or socially responsible, or that sort of description, it will have a percentage of alignment with the taxonomy of sustainable activities. So you will see that the fund you just bought is 20% or 80% aligned with the taxonomy of either environmental or social sustainability of the European Union, which will be a big thing. When you think about it, you will be able to see concretely if your investment contributes to building an environmentally or socially better and more sustainable world. Obviously, it's hugely technical and even more political, and there's a lot of discussions about that. This is the real world, so it's far from being perfect, but certainly the intention is good and the result worth working on. And then there's the public finance dimension. And obviously the public finance is essential, in particular public budget. We saw that in July of last year, the leaders of the European Union adopted a so-called resilience and recovery facility, 750 billion euros worth of money that will be borrowed by the European Commission to support not only the recovery, but also building the resilience of the European Union. Here again, good intention, reality is more nuanced. If you go on a website called Rethink the Recovery, you will see that the analysis a number of organizations, including Finance Watch, have made of the different plans is that that when you look at the different recovery and resilience plans, they are more about recovery than resilience. And by resilience, we mean building sustainability. And surprise, surprise, you know, when you're in charge, that's something that was actually addressed in the previous panel. You always have that temptation, that temptation to deal with short-term subjects as opposed to building for the future. So clearly, that's something that we're working on, is putting pressure on our leaders, all of them, all countries, regardless of their parties or nationality, to say, look, you know, build a resilient future, because otherwise, you know, what's going to happen to us, you know, can be much worse than what we're seeing in this COVID crisis. Another dimension, and I don't want to be too long, so please stop me if I'm being too long, is that by all this this public money being brought to support the economy, and this is also true of monetary policy, which is the third dimension, private finance, public budgets, and monetary policy, by all that public money coming from either public budgets or central banks to support the economy or to support financial markets, we're really creating, and you know, the center of this session is very much about markets, but we're creating a situation where public support of the economy is creating moral hazard, really, because the downside of the economy is supported by public pockets, but the upside still goes into private pockets. And that has many consequences, including, you know, enhancing an economic system that really has not proved to be able to function effectively. And here again, thinking social, developing further inequalities, which prove to be detrimental to social cohesion. So I don't want to be too long. I will just say that, you know, to summarize that we need to build a sustainable world from an environmental and social perspective. You understood that this is really my main point, that finance has an essential role to play in this, but also that we need to resolve the challenge of an economy that is increasingly being built on moral hazard. And when there, as I was just saying, where the downside is for public pockets and citizens, and where the upside goes into private pockets. This is not sustainable. It will exacerbate inequalities, and such a system does not have the internal coherence necessary to function in the long run. So you know, I'll stop here and happy to discuss, but this was to give you the, you know, overall view of where the financial world stands when it comes to building a sustainable economy and society.